It began with the number $3.17. That was the final balance in an account I had spent 3 decades building. Every paycheck, every bonus, the scraps of inheritance from my parents, all of it had been reduced to less than the price of a cup of bad coffee. I stared at the banking app on my phone, half expecting a digital glitch, a phantom decimal point that would leap 2 spaces to the right and fix everything. But it remained stark and unmoving, $3.17, and beneath it, a simple note. Final transfer complete. There was no fraud alert, no notification of a stolen card. It was just her, Vanessa, my wife, the woman with whom I had shared my life, my home, and, foolishly, my passwords. I closed the laptop and walked through the house, feeling like a stranger at a crime scene. The kind of scene where the perpetrator doesn't flee but instead waits for you, holding a glass of Pinot Grigio and wearing the self-satisfied smirk. She was on the back patio, barefoot, her toenails freshly painted, sipping something expensive from a large, stemmed glass. She didn't bother to look up when she spoke. "Don't look so sour, Daniel," she said, swirling the wine as if she had just closed a major business deal. "You're still breathing, and I still have this beautiful house. Not asterisk our asterisk house, asterisk this asterisk house." That one small word, this, cut deeper than the string of zeros that had vanished from my bank account. I stood there for a moment too long, a part of me still waiting for an explanation, an apology, anything other than this cold dismissal. But she just tipped her glass toward me, that same little smirk on her face. It was the smirk she used when she claimed to be at book club. The one I used to find so charming back when I was naive enough to believe I had a wife. I didn't say a word. I refused to yell or scream. That's exactly what she wanted: drama, a fireworks display. It would have given her the proof she needed to paint me as the ungrateful, boring, washed-up husband she'd likely been describing to her friends in whatever private group chat she used to orchestrate this grand theft. So, I just gave her a single, slow nod. Then I turned and walked into the garage. The fluorescent lights overhead flickered as I passed the dusty workbench, the set of golf clubs I hadn't touched in years, and the rowing machine she swore we'd use together. I went straight to the metal storage shelf in the back corner, second row from the bottom, hidden behind a box of tangled Christmas lights and photo albums we never got around to filling. Was the one box I never touched unless I needed to remember who I was dealing with. It was a plain, faded cardboard box, sealed with old duct tape and labeled in my own shaky handwriting from 21 years ago, Heritage Trust. It was supposed to be a forgotten formality, a contingency for a disaster I never truly believed would happen. Until now. I placed the box on the workbench, peeled back the brittle tape, and lifted the lid. Inside was a neatly organized collection of legal files, notarized copies, and one thick, sealed envelope. On the front, I had written, "In case of breach." I opened it. There was only one name typed inside in stark black ink: Charles A. Whitmar. Below it was a single phone number, a physical address in upstate New York, and a date, July 17th. 2002. The last time anyone in our lives had heard from him. Vanessa hadn't spoken to Charles, her father, since she was 22. The story she told everyone was that he had emotionally abandoned her after her mother died. The truth was far uglier. She had embezzled a significant amount of money from his construction firm during a messy payroll transition, nearly bankrupting the entire operation. He chose not to press charges, but he never forgave her. He simply vanished from her life, moving to another state, changing his number, and cutting all ties. And yet, here he was, a name in my box, like a forgotten chess piece waiting to be played. Why? Because when we bought this house, or more accurately, when I bought this house, it wasn't a joint venture. The entire down payment came from my father's estate. The deed was passed through a holding company, and thanks to my father's almost pathological fear of what he called gold diggers, the entire asset was wrapped in a conditional trust with a third-party trustee. Guess who? Vanessa never bothered with the details. Why would she? She got the house, the beautiful garden, the master's suite, the credit cards, and now, the final prize, the liquid assets. But in her haste and her arrogance, she forgot one crucial thing. If you think you've won the game by cheating, it's often because someone else rigged the board long before you even sat down. I picked up the old landline phone I kept in the garage, a relic I never unplugged, and dialed the number. It rang 3 times before a voice answered, old, gravelly, and unmistakably dry. Charles Whitmore speaking. I took a breath. Charles, it's Daniel. Daniel Grant. I'm your daughter's husband. There was a long silence on the other end. Then, he asked a single, chilling question. Is she still lying? My throat felt like sandpaper. Worse, I said. I have something you'll want to see. Another long pause. Then, the words that changed everything. I've been waiting for this call. I hung up the phone. The file box sat open on the workbench, its contents humming with the quiet energy of buried secrets finally waking up. I didn't sleep that night, not out of grief or shock, but out of cold, hard calculation. Because the house Vanessa was so proud of, the one she called this house, was never really hers to keep. The first and only time I met Charles Whitmore, he didn't offer to shake my hand. He just gave me a curt nod, the kind of gesture a man makes when signing off on a weather report brief, unreadable and final. This was right after Vanessa and I had gotten engaged. She had pleaded with me not to meet him. He's toxic, Daniel, she'd said. He'll try to manipulate you. The irony was that she was perfectly describing herself and was completely oblivious to it. Back then, Charles owned a construction firm in Syracuse. He was an old-school kind of man who worked with paper blueprints and had calloused hands. He built everything himself, contracts, properties, and long-lasting grudges. He looked me over as if he were measuring a piece of drywall, not with approval or disappointment, but with pure, unadulterated calculation. Then he asked me a single question that echoed in my mind for years. Are you marrying her or managing her? I didn't know how to answer him then. That was 22 years ago. 2 decades of silence since Vanessa had imploded his company from the inside. She had taken a consulting role, convinced the payroll manager to backdate a series of invoices, and vanished with just enough cash to cripple their quarterly report. When his board demanded to know why he hadn't pressed charges, he reportedly said, because the shame of admitting I raised her is punishment enough. And now, here I was, dialing the number of that same man, a number I'd kept in a file ominously labeled Heritage Trust. When he said, I've been waiting for this call, it felt like a key turning in a lock I had forgotten I'd built. I told him everything. I had the documents, the screenshots of her bank logs, a picture of my account balance after she had drained it down to a pathetic $3.17. But most importantly, I had the proof that the trust was still valid, still legally enforceable, and that she had just unknowingly triggered its most deeply buried clause. Charles didn't raise his voice. He simply asked, Does she know I'm the trustee? No, I said. Then don't tell her. I agreed, quietly and easily. The next move wasn't dramatic or loud. It began with a simple courier delivering a manila envelope filled with notarized statements, the original documents from the title company, and the unbroken chain of ownership, all meticulously traced through the Legacy Heritage Land Trust. The deed had never been in her name, not for a single day, and tucked deep within the legal jargon was the clause Charles had insisted upon the day the trust was founded, a day when he and my father, 2 men who had never met but shared a common distrust, decided that Vanessa could not be trusted with permanence. It was called the bad faith trigger. This clause gave the trustee Charles the absolute right to seize and liquidate the property if the primary beneficiary, me, was financially exploited or manipulated by the cohabitant spouse. The definition of exploitation was chillingly specific, draining a marital asset with malicious intent. Her withdrawal log wasn't just evidence of theft, it showed premeditation. There were recurring transfers to a private account she'd opened 3 months prior, a cash advance paid to a lawyer she once referred to as a pitbull in heels, and a wire transfer labeled only as Escrow Holding LLC. She was planning her escape. but she was funding it with my life's savings, oblivious to her father's silent wrath waiting in a legal clause she had long forgotten. I copied everything, printed it, numbered each page, and sent the package to Charles via overnight delivery. The next day, he called me. "I'm coming down," he said. "Don't tell her." "Wouldn't dream of it," I replied. I hung up and looked around the living room. She had just redecorated it using our savings. The space was filled with stark white furniture, minimalist art, and a ridiculously overpriced fake bonsai tree that she claimed symbolized balance. The irony was suffocating. The house wasn't hers. The walls, the land, the very foundation it sat on, all of it was held within a fortress she didn't even know she was locked out of. She walked in that afternoon from her yoga class, carrying a kale smoothie she wouldn't even let me taste. She looked refreshed and utterly self-satisfied. "Don't forget we have dinner with Cheryl and Dave next week," she chirped, tossing her keys into the ceramic bowl by the door. "I told them we'd host." I just nodded and offered a faint smile. "Wouldn't miss it for the world." She kissed my cheek as if she were blessing a statue, and I went back to the garage, back to the open box, and back to the plan that was quietly unfolding right under her designer shoes and condescending smirks. The man whose name she had erased from her life was about to write the final chapter.